Honestly, I used to be an absolutely awful designer when it came to designing my own apps and projects. But I've come a long way, and at this point I feel comfortable enough with what I build and what I'm able to design for the types of projects that I'm working on. It's nothing to write home about, and it's never gonna land me a job as a designer, but it makes me confident in the fact that I can design things on my own that will look good if I decide to publish them. And remember, I'm a programmer first, so being able to say that means a lot to me. So hopefully today I can share with you some of those tips that help me get to where I am. Not to the point where you're gonna become a professional designer, but maybe enough so that you're comfortable with designing your own apps and maybe see your projects come to life in a more meaningful way because you can design those apps yourself. So let's jump right into it, and let me share with you 3 tips that help me go from an absolutely terrible designer to an okay one. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Green Developer channel. As always, if you enjoyed this video, you can hit the like button, and if you want to see more content like this one, make sure to hit subscribe. Number one thing is I think you should actually learn the basics and the fundamentals of good design. Don't be like me and just open a design editor and try to think that you understand design enough to be able to come up with your own. Some of it might come naturally to you just because you've seen designs and you've paid attention to them and see what kind of works and what doesn't. By just finding some good articles or some learning tools online to be able to learn those core principles and ideas, you'll be at least able to name some of the things that you're trying to put into action with your own design. Things that you might be doing naturally will actually be on, your mental checklist of things to look out for. The idea being that instead of just counting on your natural ability to recognize what's good and what's not, you'll just build some kind of mental image and some pointers on what's actually required and what you should avoid. Think about it that way. You're learning programming and you're always trying to be better, and you do that sometimes by having to look up online articles and look at the theory behind why some of the things are done the way they're done. It's all things that kind of come naturally, but by just putting a word associated to it, or just by reading about the idea behind them and why it's important, you'll understand them a lot better and you'll be more easily able to apply them to your projects. Things like making sure that your views are not tightly coupled with your business logic, or to not rewrite the same code twice if you don't have to, so that it's more reusable and it saves you time in the long run. Those are ideas in programming that you can figure out by yourself, but just by learning them and understanding that they're ideas and core principles of what you're supposed to be doing while programming will help you be a better programmer. In the same sense, doing your research and understand how typography works, how you should mix and match it without a really good reason to do so, or maybe something as simple as using the same accent color everywhere where there's interactability in your app is a good idea. They're all kind of things that make sense intuitively, but if you just read about them and kind of create a mental image of what's appropriate to put in a design and how to use those ideas and those core concepts, you'll become a much better designer when it comes time to actually design something. Treat it as another programming language or a different science. There are some hard facts about what works and what doesn't, and you're much better off trying to read about those ideas than try to figure them out on yourself, or just use your intuition to figure them out by yourself. Number 2, make sure you iterate on your designs a lot. And one of the things that worked the best for me to achieve that is to force myself into very short design sessions. Like I said, design is in a lot of ways like programming, a really iterative process. That means that you're not gonna get everything right on the first try, and that's normal. But here's the thing, as a more beginner designer, and that kind of applies to programming too, you get tunnel vision about one way you should solve a problem or one way you should make things look so that they do what you want them to do. And with experience, a little bit more knowledge, you're able to kind of bypass that and come up with different solutions and work on them side by side and, work on them for a little bit longer so that you achieve what you want to achieve. But as a beginner, it seems to be something that's a lot harder to do. And that's where forcing yourself into taking a lot of breaks and working on your designs in really small chunks is going to help a lot, because it's going to kind of refresh all your mentality and your outlook on how to solve a problem and how to design things so they look the way you want them to look. Especially if you're working on one of your own projects, you probably don't have a really big deadline that you're trying to reach, and you don't have to be working on your designs for hours on end every day. Work on a design or a piece of the puzzle of what you're trying to build for, 30 minutes, an hour, a day, and come back the next day and you'll have a completely different outlook on how you should be doing that. In that way, you'll have a lot more different ideas on how you can tackle a problem, and in the end will benefit you a lot when you can take bits and pieces from all those different designing sessions and put them together into the best work you can come up with. Like I said, I think that's something that the more experience you have and the more design work you've done, you don't have to do as much. I'm sure that professional designers don't have to take breaks every hour just so they can come up with new ideas, even though they might, because it's always something that kind of seems to work with creative process. But it seems to work even better for some reason as a beginner, because it completely helps you clear out that tunnel vision on the design you think you want to be doing, and basically helps you make sure that you have a lot more different ideas for your project. Number 3, keep things as simple as possible. As a general rule, I'd say that as a beginner, it can never really be too simple. Try to dumb down your designs as much as possible so that there's less things you can end up making mistakes on. What you're doing is fighting so that people don't have a strong negative reaction to your designs. And so by dumbing it down, you make sure that people have a much more neutral reaction to it. And a neutral reaction doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, because that means that people can just focus on what the app does and be wowed by that instead of the design itself. On top of that, if you followed my first advice, you'll be able to use those ideas and to implement them in your designs a lot easier if you're actually using simple designs to start with. Just to do a quick recap of what I said is, number 1, make sure you learn the theory behind some of the things that you should be implementing in your designs. Number 2, force to work incrementally, and to achieve that, force yourself to work in really short sessions. It's going to do wonders to help you fight tunnel vision in your designs and to come up with new and different ideas and be able to come up with the best work you can do. And number 3, keep things as simple as possible to achieve what you want to achieve. Fancy and complicated designs usually mean just more things that you can make mistakes on, and are not necessarily warranted if you're a beginner and you just want to do something that's going to look presentable and nice and that your users can forget about while they focus on the more important parts of your project. So again, I hope this was helpful to you. I will see you all in the next video, and until then, take care.